Welcome to the debate. Our discussion today is aimed, well, squarely at the strategy professional contractors and roofers need to be employing to really maximize their revenue through insurance claim supplements. Specifically, we are drawing our material from Latif's comprehensive guide, and we're focusing today on the often overlooked opportunities in Chapter 14, siding, fascia, and exterior opportunities.
Yeah, and this chapter is critical. It's critical because it identifies these components that are, systemically missed, yet they hold some of the highest value per item increases you can get outside of just pure code upgrades. It's where the real detail work meets substantial profit.
Exactly. So the central strategic question for contractors today is this. What is the optimal approach to supplementing these complex exterior components? Should a contractor aggressively focus their limited time and resources on the highest risk, high-value items, like, say, custom metal fabrication for fascia and these exhaustive granular detach and reset lists to capture maximum compensation? I argue that these are non-negotiable elements of professional ethical billing, and when they're properly documented using Latif's methods, they basically guarantee superior profitability.
And I come at it from a fundamentally different perspective, really, which is all about the efficiency of capital. So while these items, custom fascia, comprehensive DNR, are sure, they're legitimate charges, I maintain that the highly meticulous, the administrative documentation that's required for them often leads to a pretty poor return on investment. This complexity, it just dramatically increases the risk of denial or, at the very least, severe pushback from desk adjusters. And that makes it strategically weaker than focusing on simpler supplements backed by clear building codes.
So we're really weighing the potential reward of high-stakes custom work against the, let's say, reliability of simpler volume-based strategies. Before we dive into that tension, I do want to remind our listeners this is part of a continuing series where we analyze Latif's content. For those looking at the ultimate high-level strategy, we invite you to tune into our next analysis. We're going to dive into Chapter 15, covering the crucial and frankly lucrative field of overhead and profit, which that really elevates the business model.
But for now, let's stick with the exterior envelope, because that presents a far more immediate challenge in terms of, just site documentation.
Absolutely. From my perspective, neglecting the strategic complexity of the exterior scope means a contractor is leaving substantial amounts of money unbilled. I mean, we are talking about revenue that should be theirs. Specific analysis in Chapter 14 shows that proper documentation on fascia replacement alone can elevate a typical exterior claim by an additional $2,000 to $4,000. And this is achieved by identifying what Latif rightly calls the custom bent metal fascia opportunity.
An opportunity that, I would argue, carries a pretty disproportionate administrative risk.
But it's necessary. I mean, contractors have to recognize that for the vast majority of older properties, the existing fascia profile is unique. It was often custom bent decades ago, so it requires custom fabrication on site to maintain that architectural integrity and, watershed management. Billing the cheaper, standard preformed rate is it's intentionally underbilling for specialized professional work. So instead, the contractor has to bill the RFG custom bent MTL flash line item. And crucially, this line item accounts for the specialized labor, the use of equipment, and it's often priced between, $9 and $12 per linear foot?
Yeah, which is a monumental difference.
It is a monumental price difference compared to generic stock material. This is professionalism in practice.
And what is the non-negotiable compliance documentation that Latif demands for that massive price increase?
Well, it's evidence-based and it's highly specific. We require photos of the break in use on site, which demonstrates the specialized fabrication actually happened. And that's coupled with a visual comparison of the custom profile right alongside standard stock profiles, justifying why you couldn't use the lower cost option. Furthermore, achieving maximum compensation means comprehensive billing for all DNR items. This includes gutters, downspouts, screens, fixtures. Items using specific codes like SDG GUT-DNR or SDG DWN-DNR, they might seem small individually, but they represent required labor to physically access and install the siding correctly. The business has to be compensated for every minute of that required labor.
Okay, look, I fully agree that every necessary component of labor must be compensated. I certainly don't debate the necessity of supplementing for undeniable fixed costs, like the DMO dump for siding debris. I mean, siding removal generates tremendous bulky debris. You often need a 30-yard minimum container. And since Exactimate siding labor exclusively excludes haul costs, that is a mandatory cost recovery item.
It's cost recovery, right, not a profit center, but its absence absolutely guarantees a loss.
Precisely. But when you anchor your whole supplement strategy around custom fabrication and this massive DNR list, you dramatically increase your exposure to denial. The perceived high value of that custom fascia, it's instantly mitigated by the stringent documentation. So if the contractor misses those precise photos of the custom brakework, which, let's be honest, is common in the rapid, chaotic environment of a construction site, or if the comparison photos are just inadequate, the desk adjuster is basically mandated to deny the custom adjustment and default to the low-value standard rate. So this isn't just a loss of $4,000, it damages the contractor's credibility for the entire supplement package.
The credibility issue is real, I'll grant you that, but the requirement for specialized documentation should drive the refinement of field processes, not avoidance of legitimate charges.
Okay, but let's consider the DNR items through the lens of administrative burden. We're talking about tasks that require an estimator to walk the entire perimeter of a property, a two-story house, maybe 4,000 square feet of wall area, and meticulously count 24 windows, several hose bibs, AC disconnects, exterior light fixtures, security cameras. I mean, each one requires a specific DNR line item, like PAIWNDR&R for screens, or LXC, Lit Fix DNR for lights. This granular counting, coupled with before and after photo documentation, and then correlating all that to 15 or 20 distinct line items, it's intensely administrative. If the estimator misses just one item, or if one photo is missing, the adjuster has a justification to view the entire package as padded, potentially sinking the whole submission. The time spent on those micro items might be better spent securing a guaranteed multi-$1,000 code supplement like structural uplift upgrades, which are policy-backed and objective.
And that is where our core disagreement lies. The strategic value of thoroughness versus the strategic value of, well, efficiency in documentation.
Exactly.
Let's delve deeper into the defensibility of that custom metal pricing. You called it inherently flagged for scrutiny, and you're right. It does represent a significant deviation from the norm. But it is entirely defensible when you shift the focus from the material cost to the specialized labor cost. This isn't just a general labor. This is a specialized fabricator using capital equipment, the brake, on site, to create a non-standard profile. That difference between, say, $2 per linear foot and $10 per linear foot reflects specialized skill and equipment overhead, not just material markup. The documentation, the photos of the brake in use, the profile comparison, it proves that specialized labor was mandatory to meet the property's pre-loss condition, which is the insurer's core obligation. Without this, the contractor is just intentionally undervaluing highly technical work.
I understand the theory, I do, but I question the reliability in practice. The moment that process relies on a single point of failure, like did the site manager remember to take the picture of the brake in motion before the coil was exhausted, you're creating a high-risk scenario. A desk adjuster, who is paid to manage risk for the carrier, is mandated to default to the lowest reasonable cost, so they will argue that the contractor could have sourced a standard profile that was close enough to satisfy the aesthetic requirement, unless you can prove with absolute certainty that custom fabrication was the only recourse. This sort of subjective hurdle is why I prefer to invest administrative time in supplements backed by objective, external requirements, like building code upgrades. They're just less vulnerable to interpretation than justifying a specific custom aesthetic.
See, you're conflating complexity with illegitimacy. We're not talking about subjective aesthetics. We are talking about meeting the original structural profile, which is part of the restoration requirement. And you're framing the documentation process as this constant failure risk, when Latif's guidance explicitly details the use of mobile software systems to standardize and automate photo documentation. It ensures that every required photo, including the break-in-use proof, is tagged and logged immediately, which mitigates that precise administrative failure you're so concerned about. That investment in process automation is what makes the high reward of custom fascia predictable and scalable.
Which assumes perfect system implementation, which, many contractors are still striving for. Now, let's pivot back to the true administrative nightmare, the sheer volume of detach and reset items. Even with software, the estimator still has to walk the property and accurately count every single fixture.
Which is necessary professional diligence.
But consider the economics of it. On a large exterior claim, an estimator might spend 45 minutes walking the perimeter just identifying and counting fixtures, hose bibs, security system elements, satellite dishes, you name it. They then spend another hour organizing the photos and correlating those 30 to 40 micro items to specific Xactimate codes. That's nearly 2 hours of highly paid administrative time for what? Maybe $750 worth of labor compensation? Contrast that with securing a $5,000 code supplement for decking material upgrades, which requires 30 minutes of citing IRC codes and providing 2 photos. For a medium-sized company handling 100 claims a year, the administrative cost of chasing those micro DNR items can just eat into the overall profitability margin.
But this is a fundamental misinterpretation of what DNR costs are. You're viewing them as optional revenue when they are mandatory cost recovery for required labor. If a contractor needs to install siding, SDG, R&R, VNL, they must remove items like light fixtures and gutters, SDG, UT, DNR, to access the wall surface. If they don't bill for the DNR, they are eating that labor. So this isn't about profit maximization on a small item. It's about preventing a guaranteed cumulative loss across all of their jobs. And furthermore, let's go back to the DMO dump supplement, which we agreed on. You have to document the necessity of that large 30-yard dumpster. If the contractor neglects this, they absorb a $475 to $625 cost per job. That failure to document mandatory cost recovery is a far greater strategic error than the effort it takes to document 20 light fixtures.
The dumpster is mandatory, I agree. The micro DNR items are compensation for labor that, while necessary, carries very high administrative friction. We agree the labor must be done, but we disagree on the most efficient way to see compensation. And that friction is particularly visible in exterior finishing work, like on window components.
Exactly. Let's focus on that third area. Items like window wraps, SDG, wrap WND, and screen removal and reinstall, PA, window R&R. Though they are small line items, maybe $12 to $25 each, they accumulate very rapidly when you're dealing with 20 or 30 openings on a multi-level home. Documenting the need for these ensures the full scope of exterior trim and finishing work is covered. And this protects the existing wood window frames from damage during installation and guarantees a professional, finished outcome. It minimizes warranty claims down the road.
But is that protection and finish worth the estimator's time when measured against high-value items? If the goal is maximizing profit efficiently, relying on the estimator to accurately count, photograph, and justify 20 individual PAI, WNDRR line items, plus the corresponding window wraps, it's just inefficient. The total administrative time you dedicate to securing those small fees, which rarely get adjuster resistance because they are low dollar, is a distraction. I would propose a different strategic allocation. Maybe the contractor should incorporate those inevitable small labor costs into a higher overall project management or labor rate, justified by the sheer complexity of exterior restoration, rather than trying to line itemize every single tiny fixture.
But that approach sacrifices precision and ethical transparency for administrative ease. Insurance carriers pay based on line itemized work performed. By bundling those DNR costs into a generalized labor rate, you are making the argument less defensible, not more. I mean, Latif's entire premise is that comprehensive, itemized billing backed by irrefutable photographic evidence, no matter how granular, is the key to unlocking maximum compensation. The reward here isn't just a few $100s from the screens. The reward is a bulletproof, professionally executed claim that secures thousands in custom fascia and code upgrades, which relies on the credibility you build by being thorough everywhere else.
And that high-stakes credibility is precisely why failure is so costly. The system of high-stakes, complex documentation only works if the contractor has near-perfect administrative systems in place.
If they don't, the high probability of denial on complex items like custom fascia or a massive DNR list will damage their reputation with the carrier and lower their overall net profitability, all because of excessive administrative overhead and delayed payments.
The comprehensive approach ensures the entire scope of work is covered. It protects the contractor from eating necessary labor costs, and it recovers specialized material and labor expenses like custom metal fabrication that standard estimates just ignore. Embracing this level of documentation is the difference between a high-volume, low-margin operation and a professional, high-margin restoration firm.
I still maintain that while exterior work contains legitimate, often missed opportunities, and recovering non-included costs like the DMO dump is non-negotiable, contractors must approach the highly complex documentation required for custom fabrication and these exhaustive DNR listings with caution. The potential for administrative error, the high scrutiny, and the resulting probability of denial may lower overall profitability if those administrative systems are not flawlessly executed. It just consumes valuable estimator time better spent on policy and code mandates.
And my summary stands. The exterior provides opportunities for some of the highest value per item supplements, most notably the custom metal fascia that can add thousands with verifiable photographic evidence of fabrication. Professional contractors have to embrace the documentation needed for these complex elements and the comprehensive DNR lists. This thoroughness ensures ethical billing, secures full payment for required specialized labor, and fully restores the property to its pre-loss condition, and that results in maximum compensation.
So we leave the listener to weigh the rewards of high-stakes, complex documentation against the strategic reliability of simpler, code-backed supplement strategies, and we'd encourage them to apply Latif's comprehensive principles in their next exterior claim.
Join us next time as we move on to analyze Chapter 15 and the truly transformational field of overhead and profit, or O&P. Thank you for joining The Debate.